Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, what is going on, everybody? Angel and Kevin here from the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, and today we have another episode for you guys where we're going to be talking about something that's an interesting topic to me, at least, and something, Angel, that you said that you kind of have been discussing with a couple different clients lately and stuff like that, and that's the idea of momentum and using momentum for consistency in the business. So, I actually usually start out all these episodes by kind of like explaining exactly what I mean by that. Would you mind just kind of sharing like exactly like how you've been kind of seeing that kind of work in different businesses and just different, like your different thoughts on this in general?
Yeah, so what I refer to when I think of like keeping consistency or keeping the momentum going is referring to like different stages or different seasons in someone's business where it might be a little slower or, things might spike up and you all of a sudden book yourself out for like 2-3 months or whatever. But regardless of those seasons, continuing to keep the consistency in talking to or nurturing leads, reaching out to old leads, continuing to do like self-marketing and really just keeping everything consistent throughout the year, regardless of the type of season you're in. So some things that I've seen people do is like they'll get super busy, they'll be booked out for a couple of months and maybe get to a point where they feel like they have to start turning people away. And the first thing that they think of is, well, let's go ahead and pause our ads. Like, we don't need any more calls in right now. We're super booked out and all that kind of stuff. And the thing with that is pausing your ads, not only are you going to start to lose momentum with your ads account, but then also as time passes, then you're going to get to a point maybe where you're only booked out for a month, and then that gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and then having to start the Google ads again, like you're kind of just restarting from the very beginning versus maybe doing something like cutting your budget back or staying consistent with what you're doing, but maybe instead of trying to book yourself out with board and trains, you start booking more of a different program, or maybe that's just a perfect time to hire someone on so you can continue making more sales and getting people in right away. I don't think that people should be turned away or even like put on a wait list. I think that there are other things that you could do in place of that, such as, I don't know, maybe offering a hybrid program. We can start your board and train 2 months from now, but now we'll go ahead and start some lessons. Something like that. And something where people feel like, okay, if I just put down a chunk of money now to at least get myself locked in, I have a trainer. Even if we're not going to hit the ground running with the program right away, at least I have a trainer and we're going to get started with something. And then you are, again, continuing to book yourself out. So again, just regardless of the season you're in, just keep the momentum going. So that way you are continuing to grow and you eventually get to a point where you kind of have no choice but to hire another person. So that way you can continue booking more people and just growing your profit.
Yeah, really well said. So I think two things. The first thing is having a long wait list is not the flex you think it is. Like I've talked to a lot of trainers who are, I'm booked out 6 months, I'm booked out 4 months, 8 months, whatever it is. And I think at a certain point, you need to face yourself in the mirror and just go, am I delivering kind of really bad customer service here? And people are looking for help. Think about yourself, like pick any single business model. Like you need to move from an apartment to a home or something like that. Would you be thrilled if people were like, hey, I'm booked out, man. I got a wait list of like 6 months. You'd be like, I'm going to another company. Same thing with plumbers. Same thing with dentists. Same thing with electricians. Same thing with like pick anything, sending your kid to private school, a daycare or something like that. You're not going to wait around. When you're ready for the service, you need the service. Now, I just think that that's a clear indication of it's time to hire. And you might be sitting there going like, I already have a team of 6 people and we're booked out. Great. Grow your team to 10 people. Try and find a way to help people sooner rather than later, because at a certain point, to me, at least my perspective on this is like, it shouldn't be a point of ego and pride of look how booked out I am. I think it's just at a certain point becomes poor customer service. That's the first thing. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is when we talk about consistency in the business, if you are feeling inconsistency in your business, that is materializing because there's a lack of consistency in your own life and the actions that you're taking in the business. So let me break that down a little bit. Like if you are facing inconsistency in getting clients, that means that more than likely you are inconsistent when it comes to marketing your business, right? You are inconsistent when it comes to appointment setting in your business or sales in your business. And that all comes home to roost in a way of you not having the amount of clients that you have one day, right? So just to take that a step further, the trend I normally notice with people is, and this happens for every dog trainer and every business owner at one point or another, you have this roller coaster of emotions and this roller coaster of good months and bad months. And that exists and happens because you're slow and you have nothing but time but to fill up your calendar and book out, right? So that's what you've put all of the emphasis on. That's what you put all of your time and energy into doing. And then you accomplish that goal of booking out your business. And then you take your eye off of that side of the business and you just fully focus on fulfillment. You fully focus on just keeping up with the work that you've generated for yourself. So then all of a sudden that feels really rewarding. It feels like you're being very active in the business and you're doing what you're supposed to do, which is training dogs and fixing problems and stuff like that. But the problem with that is that 30, 60, 90 days later, all of a sudden you wake up in the same position that you started off in, which is no dogs. So this is the really tricky thing about running a business is you have to focus on many different things at once. And even when you are in a place where you're up to, your eyeballs in work and can't figure out how to get out of the weeds, you still need to find time to prioritize sales and marketing and all the other stuff that got you to that point. And so I've had a lot of conversations and people have kind of ironically said to me, like, what am I supposed to do? Like not go to or not go to private training lessons or block off spots on the calendar when I could fill that with a private training session or a board and train, training session to go and do a consultation instead. And the funny thing is, yeah, that's exactly what you should do is you need to keep spots open on your calendar constantly to do the things that allowed you to get to the point where you are today, or else you're never going to get over that hurdle of it just being me, like Kevin being the only one in the business who does absolutely everything. The only way you're going to be able to have enough work to feed other people and grow the business beyond yourself is going through that really painful period in the beginning where you're so busy with work, but you still find a way to continue to do all that other stuff that got you there. So Angel, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to wear so many different hats and be responsible for so many different positions and departments and systems and all that kind of stuff. So I can see how it would be hard, like really making sure that you're maintaining consistency and good quality through all of that. Thinking of it from like a more corporate perspective, right? Like Walmart or Amazon, big corporate companies like that who have very specific people for each role in each department and all that kind of stuff, and very specific systems in place that helps things stay consistent throughout. And I know that not everyone has dreams of becoming that big. I would say most dog trainers don't. Like maybe they want a small team of trainers to help bring in more dogs, but nothing to the extent of like a Walmart or Amazon kind of thing. But I'm just using that as an example of there are people who fill these roles to make sure like those specific jobs for every little process throughout the entire company is getting done. And, if they're sick, then maybe someone else steps in and they're getting the job done that day. And so that's how you kind of keep consistency. And I think I think it is important for everyone, even if you are like a smaller one-man shop kind of thing, to have a little bit of help, even if it's one person kind of helping you maintain all the craziness on the back end, like not even client facing. I think that could go a long way. But I think we've all noticed something like this with a company where maybe they have a really good reputation for customer service and every interaction with this company is really, really good. And then all of a sudden you notice kind of a downfall in customer service and stuff like that. And that's usually what happens when maybe there's like a change in ownership or a change in management or something like that. And it might not necessarily mean that that person that it was transferred to is bad at running a business, but there's just so much going on. And with that transfer, they're having to like reestablish things, reestablish processes, and get back into their own kind of consistency. And so I'm just saying that to say, like, any little thing in business or in life, or, bringing on new people, getting rid of old people, all these different things can impact the consistency in a business. And those are just like the bigger things to look at. That's not even, considering the smaller things like you mentioned. I think of just like having to focus on so many different things in a business, and not to mention having to like have a life, and like run your own household, and maybe maintaining the vehicle that you are using to get to every single client's houses and all that kind of stuff. So there are so many different things that contribute to that. But I think it's a good thing to really like take a step back and look at all of those different factors in your life, in your business, and see like where you can make changes, or maybe where you can get more help just to make sure things are running a little bit smoother. Because the smoother that things are running, the more consistent things are running, I think inevitably that just helps in the long run.
Yeah. Helps for everybody. You're going to feel better if things are running smoothly. Like you don't want to run a business. It doesn't feel good to, going back to the example I was using before, it never feels good to enter back into that phase in your business where you don't have consistent lead flow or client flow, and your client acquisition system is all of a sudden feels like it got completely turned off. Nobody wants to feel that way, because all that really is where's the next payment going to come from? Where's my next client going to come from? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my car note? How am I going to put groceries on the table? All that stuff. Yeah. So future you will always think past you for doing the things today that will benefit you tomorrow, And yeah, just using that word consistency. We all hear that a million times and everyone knows what that word means. But when you really break it down, inconsistency can manifest in so many different ways in your business. And you can really start seeing it rear its ugly head when you go to grow the business. And that can happen, to the example you were saying before of like use hiring as the example, right? So if you don't train people correctly and you don't have a constant of what's supposed to be happening, then they get sent out into the field. They don't do a good job. You start getting bad reviews. You start having to deal with headaches and refunds and angry customers and all that stuff. And so I think what this really comes down to is set really clear goals about what it is. What are the expectations that you have for the business, your team members, and for yourself? Yourself is a big part of this, where it's so easy to hold people to other people to other standards of this is what I expect out of people. But it's very easy to let yourself off the hook a lot of the time. When things get hard, it's very easy just to be like, you know what? It's been really tough here. I'm just going to shut down emotionally. I'm just going to take a couple weeks off marketing and sales, and going to take a couple months off of doing consultations. And I've seen people do that so many times. And when times feel like that, yeah, you can take a day or so to kind of recharge your batteries, right? But all that you're doing is giving yourself the instant gratification in the moment. But in the long term, you're really just losing all momentum in the business.
Yeah.
And so what you really should do is when you feel stressed out and you feel like I have lost control here, I feel overworked and undervalued and underpaid, raise your prices, look for some help, right? A lot of times people, when it comes to hiring, they get so freaked out by the idea because they're like, who's this person going to be? I'm not going to be able to find anyone as good as me. I can't trust anybody. And what I've been coaching a lot of our clients through this recently, having a lot of conversations about this. And the conclusion that I've come to is so many people are worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet and probably will never happen. What if I hire somebody and they mess up my business? You'd probably fire them before you messed up your business. You'd probably catch on that they're doing a crappy job pretty quickly,
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
And number two, you're not going to hire them in the first place if you're not pumped about having them on your team. And number three, the opposite is probably what's going to happen, where you're going to get that person on your team and you're going to go, this was the best decision I ever made. And so all of this stuff just comes back to, I know I'm kind of going in a couple different directions here, but if you're feeling inconsistency in your business because you no longer have the time to do the things that you should be doing, it's time to make a change, right? And so this is like a call to action to do that. So either, again, the two biggest levers I usually encourage people to pull is raise your prices so that way you don't need to work with as many clients to make the amount of money you need to make. And don't be so scared about people turning you away because you raised your prices. Or if your prices are already in a really good spot and you're thrilled with them, you're still feeling like I can't get to everybody, then what you need to do is go and make that higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that as far as hiring goes, with people having the concern of like, what if this new person messes things up? Or what if they can't do it as good as I can, or whatever it is. You said that like you'll probably notice that before it even gets to that point, and you'll let that person go. And yeah, I mean, it's very simple, but I feel like that is a perfect statement. Like, you're not going to hire someone on and just be like, okay, here's what you got to do, go do it. And then all of a sudden you're just like not present and they burn your business to the ground. Like, that's not realistic. You know, you're going to go through this whole like training process or shadowing or interning or whatever kind of process you feel comfortable with. And I feel like that just kind of goes without saying, you know, but people automatically jump to this worry and this concern about, you know, making the wrong hire, and then everything just, you know, goes sour. And if it does, then, you know, you let them go. But I don't think it's going to get very far before you notice that. I always tell people, like, hire someone on and you can start them out. Like, if you're hiring a new trainer, for example, start them off as like a kennel tech / they're interning for a trainer position. So they're doing all of like the kennel tech duties, and then they're shadowing you on literally everything that you're doing. Every client that you're meeting with for lessons and consults and working dogs and all that kind of stuff. Like, they're shadowing you on quite literally everything, and you'll be able to see their every move while they're working with you. So that way you can make the decision on when you're comfortable with stepping away for a little bit and maybe having them work dogs while you're going to consultations, or, you know, they are giving their input a lot in consultations and you like it and you're like, I think I would feel comfortable with you trying one or two out by yourself, kind of thing.
Exactly.
I know that's kind of going on down like a different topic than what we started with, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, I think people read way too deeply into it, and automatically their mind goes to like the end part of all of a sudden having a business that's just like burned to the ground from this one wrong hire.
Yeah,
and that's just not realistic.
No, absolutely not. That's like catastrophic thinking. And what I had to replace my thinking with when I was like, you know, I'm just too much of a control freak. I'm way too particular in the way that things get done. What I really needed to replace that with is like, I'm scared to hire somebody, and getting really down to the root of like, why am I scared to hire somebody? Am I not willing to part ways with that extra profit in the business? Do I not feel confident in my ability to actually pull this off? There's so many different ways that can kind of show up, and the fear can creep in and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's really well said. At the end of the day, I don't mean this offensively to anybody who's listening to this who's a kennel tech, right? And I know kennel tech, that's a very general term. Kennel techs can do anything from just like cleaning up kennels all the way up to being responsible for like caring for dogs, driving them around, you know, if they're sick, taking them to the vet, or, you know, diagnosing different issues. So, but we're not talking about, like, when we say kennel tech in this context, we're not talking about the highest end of a kennel tech that's doing all that different stuff. We're talking about you hire somebody, and basically it's the equivalent of like being on a construction site and hiring a guy to dig a ditch. It's like, how bad can you mess up digging a ditch? You know, you do the job or you don't, right? It's like either you clean the kennels out or you don't. Either you do a good job with it or you don't. So like, they're really not in a position to really royally screw up your business that bad. You're not giving them access to clients in the beginning. You're not giving them access to your finances. You're not giving them access to your social media accounts. Like, you'll know within 24 hours or not if somebody can do the job or not.
Yeah. And also, if you are that type of person, like you mentioned, maybe you feel like you're just too much of a control freak to have another person working with you. That, like, okay, if I think of that more in like an optimistic way, you're a control freak. That means that you are going to make sure that this new hire has like every single task and process down pat before they're on their own. And so you're basically,
if I just want to say this real quick, you're exactly right there. If you're a control freak and you actually are, then you should have 20 different SOPs and checklists and documents ready to go for when that person's is ready to get started. Because if you're a control freak and you don't have that stuff done, you're not a control freak, and you're just somebody who's dealing with like fear of what happens if I fire or hire somebody and it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as a control freak, you can you'll just at least be able to make sure that this person is freaking rock solid before they're, left out to the wolves.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I appreciate you saying that, because that is stuff that people say when they don't know what else to say. I'm too particular. I'm a control freak. And you think you're the only one who's ever thought that? Like, do you think that Jeff Bezos is not a control freak? Do you think Bill Gates isn't a control freak? They want things done in a very particular way, So just think of it in those regards. Like, people have done this before. They've hired before. You're not the first person to do it. And what I always think about too is like, what's the worst that happens? You do it, doesn't work out, you let them go. You move on with your life. And either you learn a lesson, a very valuable lesson, and you learn, hey, this is the next person I'm going to hire. This is the stuff I'm going to watch out for. Or you just sort of like, you know what, I'm happier doing it myself. And you go back to doing that. But until you do it, you'll never really know.
Yep. Either way, it'll be a good lesson learned.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to keep this one short today just because we have a couple calls coming up here. So I appreciate you guys listening as always. I know I said this in one of the last episodes, so we're going to be making some changes and just doing things a little bit differently, and might be hosting these podcasts on a different platform pretty soon and stuff like that. So right now we're on YouTube and Spotify. So if you guys want to listen to it in those different places, go right ahead. And so we got a bunch of exciting stuff to come. And just as always, we appreciate you guys listening and supporting us and the feedback we get and stuff like that. So if there's ever a topic you want us to cover, anything that you are curious about in your business, we're more than happy to use one of these as kind of like just a coaching session, frankly, where we can give you our exact feedback and ideas. And even if you want to be kept anonymous, we're happy to do that. We don't need to name anybody by name, but just make sure to send us a message or comment down below in the comment section of this video when it gets posted. And we can definitely take care of that for you guys. So as always, we appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys very soon in the next one. See you guys.
Bye, guys.